Out in Black people. I hope you guys are having a good day. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. We have intelligent Black conversations and love about all the issues that matter to our people. Also, we are Black first on this platform. You guys know that means that we put our community first. We are number one. If we don't solve our problems, nobody will. We step forward and we do what we got to do to make sure that our people are as strong as we need to be. So if you agree with that philosophy, if you agree with the B1 philosophy, put hashtag B1 in the chat. Put your hashtag B1 in the chat. Also, shout out the city that you're from. I'd like to see what city you guys are from as we go on in this conversation. So today we're going to talk about what I would actually refer to as the baby mama, baby daddy itis in the Black community. We have we have an oversupply of baby mamas and baby daddies, and and a lot of kids growing up, a large percentage of our children growing up without both parents in the house. And so without casting blame on anybody for any of this, because I'm sure that people we're all to blame. We know that the other man is to blame as well for the structure of our society. I just want to get some insights into this. So let's get it cracking. Let's get started. So the first person I'm going to turn to is, and I'll introduce each panelist as they make their first comment. So I'm going to start with Dr. Charles Cole. Dr. Cole is out of Chicago, and he lives also in the Bay Area. You live in the Bay Area too as well, right?
Oakland, yeah.
Yeah. So, Dr. Cole, let's just start from the beginning. All right. So, I'll tell you, my mama was a baby mama, so to speak. My daddy was gone. He wasn't even there when I was born. When I was born, it was just me and my mother. That's it. And me and my mother's waiting on the corner for my grandma to pick her up from the hospital. That's how crazy it was when I was born. Never knew my dad, right? But I did have a stepfather when I was 3. I thought that so that didn't seem abnormal to me. But as I look at the world, I think it is it seems like something's not quite right. What do you think is going on with so many children not even expecting, not statistically, not being able to expect to have both parents in the house with them on a daily basis? What do you think?
Well, one, I mean, we know that it has an impact, right? And what the data talks about, I don't have children, but I research around educating Black kids, right? And what works and what doesn't. And what the research does say is having a father figure that the child has access to is really important. So since around 2005, the number of single Black mothers is around just north of 4 million, which is a lot of folks. But because you're a single Black mother doesn't mean that you can't make sure your kid is successful. If you can, but that having that father figure with you is quite helpful. So, I mean, I think it's tough, and there's a lot of commentary I think we're gonna get around why that is, which I'm interested to hear from the fathers and the mothers on the panel. But my lens is gonna be through education and achievement, and what we can do, whether you 2-parent or 1-parent.
Okay, so Dr. Charm's also in Chicago, right? Is that right, Dr. Charm?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's nice to follow up with a Black woman's perspective, and Dr. Charm is one of the great Black women in this country. What's going on? I mean, is there a problem, and if so, how alarmed should we be?
I think there is a problem, but I don't want to pinpoint it as to absentee fathers. I think that the Black marriage rate is on the decline, as is the marriage rate in the country in general amongst all races. But I think because there's been such a targeted destruction of the Black family between mass incarceration and other social policies that affect us, that we're at a crisis point at this point in time. I mean, in the 50s, we had higher marriage rates than even white people. And so now we're at this crossroads. And I really think that it is something that we have to address and study and look at improving in order to be successful as a group.
So I'm unmuted myself. Sometimes I just so you know, sometimes I might have to mute if I hear a little background noise. But if I accidentally mute you or something, just let me know. All right. So okay. So I'm hearing a lot of things, right? I'm hearing that obviously we know things like mass incarceration kind of cause a lot of the issue that we're facing. I think that there might be some debates about the severity of it, how much of an issue it is. So I'd be curious to ask my brother, Citizen Stewart. What's your first name again, brother?
Chris Stewart. Chris.
My brother Chris.
Yeah.
Should I be concerned? I mean, first of all, do you think that not having both parents on average statistically has an impact on the child's outcomes, or do you think it's kind of a non-issue? It's a nothing burger. What do you think?
So first of all, I just would like to say that the number is going down and has been since 2010. So for Black single parent families, it's gone down from 2010 to 2020, and it's one of the only groups that has gone down. It's going up in other communities. So just to say that. Second, I just think that there needs to always be like conversation around a definition of terms. Like just because you are having a child out of wedlock does not mean that there's not a man in the family or a father there. So we have to get precise about how big of a problem we're talking about, because sometimes we talk about it in terms of you would swear that every Black child had no dad in the house, for instance. And then we have to I break the problem down into two places: external forces and internal forces. External forces being things around like all the anti-family, anti-Black man policies that have existed throughout time from decade to decade to decade. And those policies have gotten more and more clever about how to marginalize Black men. And then the internal policies are the things that we control, like our culture. Like, are we acculturated to the meme of the single mother, the I don't need a man, person? And what are our children consuming? What are we putting before them? What are they seeing that they're consuming that gives them the idea that it's a natural state of things to not have a man in the picture?
So I'd be curious to ask my brother Tony Lindsay. You're a filmmaker, and my brother Stuart mentioned media and being acculturated to some of what we're seeing, and almost like that's normal. What role do you think media is playing in kind of perpetuating ideas that are not healthy for families and for community?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that was my main concern, is that the things I always thought that what we should do is we really have to look at things through the lens of socially accepted norms, right? That we tend to adopt as Black people in this country. Like what works for others doesn't necessarily work for us. So like when we look at things like in the wider context, right? We know that the United States has the highest rate of children living in single parent homes in the whole world. Almost 25% of children living in the United States live in single parent homes. But then we also have to define what single parent homes are, because quite often when we talk about single parent homes in the context of Black people, we always tend to view the Black man as being absent in that picture. And so I agree very much with Chris in what he was saying, because if we look at the data, we look at the statistics, we'll know that Black fathers, whether they are married to the mother or they're romantically involved with them, they're still the most active participants in their children's lives of any other race. And that's been consistent for the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Constance Carter, I'd like to ask you this question. So my brother just mentioned the involvement that obviously every custodial and non-custodial parent is not created equal. And there are these studies that say that Black fathers are actually more involved with their children than other groups, right? Which takes out any opportunity for significant male bashing. But do you think that I'm not a believer that having an overly involved non-custodial parent is a replacement for having a parent that wakes you up every day and sends you to school and feeds you every day and is sitting there every day at dinner. I know that maybe I'm biased. I head a blended family, and there are times where I have to say to one of the kids, I'm like, I'm gonna call your daddy, because we need your daddy involved in this situation right now, because if you were my biological child, somebody might be getting strangled right at this moment, right? But I can't strangle you because you ain't mine. But let me call your daddy, see if I can get strangling permission. I'm kidding. I don't promote child abuse, but y'all get the point. And if you haven't ever wanted to strangle your child at some point, then you haven't been a parent. So Constance, what do you think? I mean, I don't know if there's a replacement for having a parent right there in the house. What are your thoughts?
I think that, having a parent, there's no substitution for having a biological parent in the house. I got married really, really young and started having kids really young in my early 20s. And getting married, you never think that you're going to be in a place where you're not going to be married at some point. You don't get married to get a divorce. And simply that those things sometimes just happen. And so I never thought that I would be a single parent ever. And then here comes, time and all of these other things that happen where, it happens whether you like it or not, or, just circumstances and situations. I think the biggest thing though that, we have to focus on as a community or as parents is figuring out how to make sure that we are creating the best environment with our children as we can, with having to be able to maneuver, because people, they're just not staying together like they were. People just, people just aren't. People, number one, people aren't getting married as at a rate as they were, and then when they do, like we were the last of the Mohicans, been together 30 years, been married 23 years, and you just don't think that it's going to happen, but it does. And then, when it does happen, you got to figure out how to make it as least impactful as you can for the kids. And I think that's where the focus really needs to be. As we're in the situation where we have, some parents that aren't in the house, but how do you make it as least impactful for the children as possible? And I think that's what really the focus should be.
Okay, well, I asked this question to anybody on the panel. By the way, everybody who's watching, please hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe button. You're watching drboystv.com, and we're talking about single parenthood in the Black community and what's going right and what's going wrong. I'd like to ask anybody on the panel, and I had to mute all the microphones just got to hear a little bit of feedback, but I can, if it's on mine, I'll unmute you. Just raise your hand if you want to answer this question. What's wrong with relationships in America? I'm not going to talk about Black America. I'm not talking about just Black people. But I just kind of always thought that when you say till death do us part, that's what you're supposed to mean. Or that if you have a child, you're supposed to definitely both raise a child together. And then something goes wrong. And then, like Constance said, sometimes life just happens and things happen that you don't expect. What's going wrong? What is happening? Or if you could point to any broad trend that's driving this? I mean, I'm seeing couples that will get together long enough to make a baby, but not even long enough to give birth to the child. What do y'all think about that? Just kind of do this. If you can, unmute yourself. Anybody on the panel? Is everybody stumped? Okay.
No, I'm not stumped.
Go ahead, Dr. Charles.
I think that, like I said before, America, one of the indications of the fall of an empire is a high divorce rate. And right now in America, we have a 50% divorce rate. Now, they may attribute it to finances, but what did Malcolm X say when America, or when white people get a cold, Black people get the flu or get pneumonia? So it's like we have a high divorce rate in America in general, and so this is going to specifically even more impact our people. And so we have a lot of other stressors that other groups don't have. So we're dealing with the trauma of slavery and chattel slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and all those things that come along with it. And specifically, we as a group have deliberately been targeted for annihilation in this country. And so everything we see tells us not to be a family. Even in Hollywood, you rarely see films where you have a Black man and a Black woman in a love story as a film. It's so rare, to the point where, what was that movie, Sylvie's Love, that came out on Amazon? Everybody's just like, oh my God, it was great. We see it's a man and a Black man and a Black woman in love together. I'm like, that should be the norm. It shouldn't be the exception. So we're constantly attacked with all these images and all these other things that we see, and dealing with the trauma and the fallout and the financial fallout. So I think coming in, and I've never been married, so I can't, I'm not like Constance that can speak from the perspective of a person that's married, but from a perspective of a person that is a single person and is dated, but also and really self-aware. I think in general in this country, people go into marriage with unrealistic expectations. And then when you compound that with a specific trauma to this specific group that has specifically been attacked, then it is a recipe for disaster in a lot of ways.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Cole. Sorry, you know what? Tony was next. And okay. I'd like to ask the panelists. First of all, raise your hand if you have children. Everybody who has a child, raise your hand. Okay. Looks like all you raise your hand except Dr. Cole. Okay.
I sure didn't.
How many of you are how many of y'all are married? Raise your hand. Or married now. Okay. How many of you have been married? Raise your hand. Oh, don't worry. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed. Okay. Well, I guess being married means you've been married, right? Okay. I asked this because I want to get some different perspectives on it. So, Dr. Cole, what are you about? How old are you, man? About 30, 33, 34?
Thank you. I'm 37.
37. Okay, well, you look 28.
Brother, I'll be here on every show. Keep going.
But you're as smart as an 80-year-old. You're as smart as an 80-year-old. All right. So, Dr. Cole, I'd be curious to get your take in terms of being a single man, and you're a sharp guy, good looking, no homo, but you're a good looking dude. And I got, brothers got to say that, right? Because y'all, I don't want y'all spreading no weird rumors,
brother. Listen,
sorry,
brother.
I gotta get that out. I gotta get that out. Anyway, I'm being silly, but no. But in all seriousness, though, you meet women in different places and things like that. What's it like? And I'm asking this because I want to go in the direction of just talking about relationships, because relationships obviously lead to procreation and family situations, good or bad. What would you say that about dating as a 30-something Black man that might surprise us in terms of what you're seeing, like seeing the world from your eyes in the position that you're in? Share some thoughts on that.
Well, one, I held off because I had both parents, but as you know from a previous show, my parents were addicts and they got clean. But I raised my brother and sister early, and I just was like, oh, I don't want to do this, and I wanted to wait and get my doctorate and start my companies and do all those things. Now I know people are gonna say you could have did that with somebody, and maybe, but that was my plan, and I worked that plan, right? I think that when we talk about relationships now, though, man, I think you have a lot of people getting relationship advice from folks that's not in relationships. So for instance, when I do get married, there are people that I have that have been married 40 years, 50 years. And that's where I will go and get that advice from, because if you listen to social media or the media at large around relationships and you don't need that girl or that girl don't need that man or this, that, and the third, it's a lot of that. It feels like it's a lot of competition kind of hopping off directly too. And I'm not trying to date somebody to compete with them. I'm trying to date somebody to be with them, right? So I think those are just things that I've seen. But again, I think that if people enter into a union being combative, which I think we see a lot more, just with I think you did a show on it, and me and Chris have talked about it before. When all this stuff was happening, when it was the summer of uprising and all that stuff, it was so many campaigns trying to put Black men and Black women against each other, and that don't really help those unions either, right? Or when we talk about what toxic masculinity is and all that stuff, it's like, well, my grandmother taught me that I'm supposed to take care of my family. I'm supposed to be able to provide. I'm supposed to be able to do some things. So I think that the messaging has changed. I think that we are a less religious country, and I think people are living longer. So I think when you put in all that stuff in the pot, you get the results that you get.
Okay, that's a good perspective you bring up in terms of this weird gender war that it seems like I
don't buy into the gender war, but I'm just saying it was
no, but I agree. I mean, and you see it kind of happen both ways. I know one thing. I happen to be engaged to a lady who is a couples counselor, which is a blessing sometimes it's a curse. and I know that she's kind of observed that a lot of the advice that people are getting online about relationships, some of it's healthy advice and some of it's just bashing. Like I enjoyed, and we have to specifically point out maybe like this, the Kevin Samuel stuff. And I want to be careful because I don't want to diss what he's doing at all. But I had a lot of women, especially, that came to me and said, I'm really uncomfortable with the fact that there are tens of thousands of Black men every day that love to watch him bash away on people who have been traumatized, who've gone through things, right? Now, to be fair, though, from what I understand, he's done that with men and women, but just that type of energy has led people to say there's got to be a healthier way to kind of deal with this. And it almost seems, though, that people enjoy like seeing maybe women tearing down Black men and blaming them for all their problems. And then same thing, seeing men tear down Black women. And I don't really think bashing is a way to build family. How do we go from there? How do we switch from the toxic energy to something that's more constructive, where we're solving the problem as opposed to figuring out who to blame? Anybody can jump in on that.
I mean, I might be the oldest person here. I'm not sure. So
Well, you
Let
look
me.
28 also, so I
Well,
don't.
I appreciate you. I'm
I
like
won't
I'm like
believe
Charles too. Then I'll be here every night, bro.
you.
So I think we're fighting a massive fight against the culture of materialism and narcissism like we've never seen ever before. I think we are watching the tenderization of relationships that I've never seen in my lifetime. That wasn't, you asked, when people were dating. When I think back to a long time ago, there were just things that didn't exist that exist now that have automated the dysfunction of relationships, have made it, a social media. Everybody wants an Instagram husband and lifestyle. And somebody who's been married for 15 years, I can tell you there's no such thing as an Instagram husband or relationship. If you're not ready to be sick with somebody, or you're not ready to build with somebody in rough times and rough patches because it doesn't look good on your Instagram, you're in trouble. So I hate to sound like, the old person who's going to say like, people don't want to join things anymore. Churches are having trouble keeping parishioners and keeping congregants in their churches. PTAs are falling apart. All of the bowling alone stuff that we've heard in social science, people aren't joining things that don't have like an individual payoff. And then sometimes they may be looking at relationships as like an accessory to a lifestyle that they've seen on Instagram that they want to live, rather than a relationship, like a real relationship in life. So I think we're fighting an uphill battle if we want to go, like, how are you going to get people off of social media, off of Tinder, off of swipe left, swipe right, in terms of, do you look right, or do you have the material goods behind you? We're in real trouble if we think that we can easily reverse the culture of it. So that there's nothing hopeful in what I just said. I'm just making an observation that I think we're fighting a huge problem.
Well, you know what? I think that there was something hopeful there. Constance, I'd like to ask you what you think about this. What I heard that was hopeful in what and I'm so sorry. I see Citizen Stewart, and I keep wanting to call you Citizen, but give me your first name again, brother. I apologize.
You can call me Citizen, bro. That's cool. Just because it's
Okay,
not a government name. Not a government name. I got to hide out on this show, bro.
My brother, Citizen Stewart. All right. I'm gonna send you that anonymous Bitcoin after we get done. That's good. We're gonna keep you off the grid. All right. So like my brother, Mr. Stewart just said, it sounds like he was kind of bringing things back to earth, right? He talks about the tenderization of relationships. And at first I was like, wait, I didn't know, I didn't connect it to Tinder, the app. At first I was like, Tinder, what do you mean? Like Tinder, the way meat is tender, like it's too tender, like tenderoni? Or you talking about Tinder, like money tender? Like, oh, Tinder, the app. I get it. Okay. Yeah. And you're right. Like, so Constance, I like, for example, I've never messed with the Tinder app. Lord knows I wouldn't. But it's almost, from the way it's been described to me, it sounds like just a really, really bad way to be introduced to relationships and sexuality. Just something that just doesn't compute. Certainly it's not going to lead to healthy relationships. Not going to lead to anything lasting. It seems like it's disease infested and, built on sort of, triggering these sort of very just lustful kinds of energy, right? That's not going to lead. That doesn't lead to love and relationships. Well, what's that difference? And how do you even talk about relationships in a world where things have been tenderized? Constance. Constance is muted.
I said you are talking to the wrong person in this one, because I am totally green to that whole concept of online dating. But I know one of the things I used to tell my single friends is that didn't want to get on to these dating sites. Girl, if I was you, I will be on there. Y'all tripping, because especially in this day of isolation, that's really the only way that you're able to meet new people. You really can't meet people outside of sort of the online aspect. But I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I've seen a lot of people who've met their soulmates on online dating, so I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't know of it as it being just a hookup thing. I think you can, if you're asking the right questions, you can establish something that's really meaningful before you actually meet them. If you're, one of the things my brother Charles that's gonna be on here he says the first thing he asks is what was the last book that you read? So you can know, if they're intellectual or not, and what kind of music do you listen to? Because I got to know if I could vibe with you. So there's things I think on that level that you can really kind of get to know people and then weed them out. And then you don't have to, sort of kiss a bunch of frogs before you really know who this person is. And dating could be very casual. It doesn't have to be, something where you got to hook up with people. I was told by one young lady, she was like, I used to date I used to do 3 dates a day. I would have to go to the same place, and I would have a date at 5, I would have a date at 7, and I would have a date at 9. It's just fun. It's just meeting new people. So I think if, as a single person, if you kind of keep it light and you're kind of just seeing what's out there, just real casual, it could be something that can be done. But
Wow.
Dr. Charm may have more experience than me because she's been single a lot longer than I have. So
Yeah, and I love. Yeah, I did that.
Go, please, Dr. Shaw. I'm sorry.
No, I did that too. I would, at one point I'd have like 1 at 5, 1 at 7, 1 at 9. And the whole thing is that with online dating, 1 out of 3, because I was kind of like apprehensive, especially with the apps, because I kind of was, I'd done like some of the traditional dating sites, like Match.com and all that kind of stuff. But with the apps, I was a little bit more apprehensive until I did some research, and they did 1 out of 3 married couples today have met online. And some of these apps, they have millions and millions of users worldwide. I once met a guy on a dating app, and he, we had similar education levels and a lot of things in common, and he lived a mile away from me. And so that really taught me, as far as online dating, is that sometimes it just increases the probability of you meeting people that you may not meet in your everyday life for whatever reason. Because at that time I was in school, I was in medical school, I was really studying really hard. So I didn't have time to go out and, go socialize. So I was just like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this guy, I've never seen this guy before. We lived in the same neighborhood. So as far as online dating, I think any kind of device, whether you meet the person in a bar, meet him at the gym, meet anywhere, if you don't have the right intentions, you don't have the right goals, if you don't have the right mindset, any of it can be trash and trashy. So it's really about the intention behind it. I have one of my really good doctor friends met her husband on eHarmony. They got married, and this was kind of a weird one. They proposed, I think, at their first meeting, or he proposed to her at their first meeting. They got married within I think they would have gotten married within 2 months, but then his mother died, and they've been married a decade now. So you always hear stories like that, and I think it's quite interesting.
I mean, arranged marriages got way better stats than we got in the United States. We always look at things from an ethnocentric lens, right? Like from just our culture, but look, arranged marriages for a lot of people, those things work. I don't need the whole screen. That was the whole point. I'm just saying, they even
have dating sites for arranged marriages. Like a lot of these Indian families, they will have, and I've seen that on one of the TLC shows or something. I think it was one. It was called Arranged, where all the people who were on that show, they had been arranged marriage, and this Indian couple, both of them very good education levels, this and that. They had an Indian website for people who wanted to arrange for their kids to get married, and the parents picked out the person, and it was this whole Indian dating site. I thought that was interesting.
But that kind of tends to be based
I'll go ahead. Tony, you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying, but that really pretty much kind of tends to be based in cultural norms and religious, practice. So I don't know if I would really gauge that so much as far as the success rate is concerned. And I know you were saying earlier that 1 in 3 marriages, I guess, were based in internet dating. But I'm interested to know what the divorce rate would be on that, like personally, because I think that we're in an age where human to human contact is being just totally replaced with digitization, right? And, we can interview people on the internet and say, hi, let me check this guy and check that one out. But you can do that in person. Like, how are you really going to tell what a person is like if you're not looking in their eyes and seeing, what they mean, watching their body language and all of that. So
I disagree, though. I think you could really connect with someone on an intellectual level before you make physical contact. I'm looking at some of the comments, and they're like, you're kissing a bunch of frogs, and I don't think that you have to kiss a bunch of frogs. You don't have to be in a relationship. You're just really getting to know people on that level, and
that's how you get catfished. I mean, they got shows like that.
Don't get cat. No, that's how you don't get catfished, because first you start and you talk here, right? You're talking from your heart and from your soul, and then you meet, and then it could go to the next level. I mean, I don't suggest.
Find out it's a 600-pound man, living in a trailer home.
So you're talking to somebody for 3 months online. You talk, you meet, and then you move on. You decided this is what you really want to do.
I
But
think
you guys are forgetting.
I see what you're both saying. Let's get on that catfish thing real quick. I think you can be catfish. You can be catfished in both directions. You can be catfished by somebody communicating really well online, and then you meet them and you find out that they're not the gender that they said that they are, or they don't. It's just some like made up person, right?
Right.
And then you can be catfished in the other direction. People don't talk about that type of catfish where somebody looks good and a man you trust in a big butt and a smile. And you find out that you should have taken time to get to know what was behind that smile and what was inside that woman before you got to know what was going on the outside. Because a lot of times, I mean, if you study the science of attraction, it pretty much says that Mother Nature designed the universe to confuse you and to trick you into doing a whole lot of crazy shit. Excuse my friend. I cuss. I told myself I wouldn't do it.
There you go.
But seriously, like like that attraction, when you get to that emotional trigger where you're like, ooh, girl, he was so smooth, and he was so this and so that. Next thing you know, you're overlooking all the rational things that you would have picked up if you were just talking to that person online for a while. Dr. Charm, please.
We're missing a big point here. And the biggest point that everyone is missing is coronavirus. Okay. There's been an explosion of online dating because people have been locked down. The bars are closed. The restaurants are closed. I mean, really, I think it's some good pickings online right now because you got people that probably wouldn't be on the apps that's on the apps right now because of that damn Rona, that heifer Rona. So and really we're being prudent and safe. We need to social distance, and what more social distancing can you have than being online? But I think you have to be smart about how you online date. The way I online date, I will background check these fools. I surely will. That's what it's for. $19.99, give me peace of mind. But what you do is you meet, you chat a little bit on the app. For ladies who are concerned about their safety, you got a Google phone number. You don't have to give them your real number, and you can text on that Google number. You decide to meet quickly. You don't conversate for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. You talk for a little bit, and then you meet in a public place, and then you can see if it's a worm or not, if she's right or not. And then that's it. Then you prevent catfishing. Everything. It's a science to this. I need to write a book. Science to this.
Yes.
But I'm getting mixed messages. I'm getting mixed messages about it though.
You can get them. Before you hit that first day, you get them corona test results before you hit that. You know what I'm saying? But and to your point, Dr. Boyce, when you have the physicality first, you do tend to overlook those other things. And there's this saying that red flags be looking like Six Flags when you're feeling somebody. So you can kind of do that and just kind of focus on and listen and hear the things that they're saying rather than what you see physically, because that could get in the way. You have those foggy goggles, or what they call them, those beer goggles that you have when you first talking to somebody. You can kind of get all that stuff out the way, I think.
Interesting. So I want to go to Citizen Stewart. Mr. Stewart, you had something to say, and I want you to jump in because he came in with his real deep, serious voice, and he said, so I'm telling you, he's about to say something.
I just feel like I'm getting mixed messages.
Hold on. Before you do that, brother, do that real quick, I want to let everybody know, we started out talking about single parent homes in the Black community. But we don't went into a whole bunch of other stuff. But so we just a bunch of Black people. I get a chance to talk to some really smart Black people. So if you could do us a favor, hit the thumbs up button right now, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. And also, I should let you all know that this weekend, the Women of Wealth weekend is happening. I know Constance Carter is going to be there. Dr. Charm, are you going to be there as well? Are you?
No.
Okay. I thought I saw you on there, but I know you're involved with some other stuff. And so if you want to go take a look, it's for women, it's women only. Over 20 experts that happen to be all women. So if you're into that kind of thing, wealth and making money, creating an online course, whatever it is you're trying to do, go to womenofwealthweekend.com. I want to make sure I mention that. So now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Stewart, because I know you have something to say, brother. Please.
Well, I just have an unfinished thought too, because I'm feeling like I'm hearing mixed messages. Like the one message that we hear so often is that where are all the good men? Where are all the marriage bound men? Where are the men that want a quality relationship? And at the same time, we're glorifying the over dating and the use of these apps and the things and the culture, the culture that isn't a marriage bound culture, and the culture of hookup and the culture of disposability of people. Like, let me just go through 8 or 10 of them or 15 of them or 20 of them. But, that becomes addicting. You never stop. You never find that. But I do have enough people in my life that, say in my ear, this ain't working out. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm approaching an age where I thought that it would already be a picket fence for me somewhere, and it's not, right? So I'm just getting mixed messages, because on one hand, the message is around how, where are all the good men, and where are the ones that want something real and meaningful from a woman rather than just the hookup. I will also say this too, as feeling old when I talk about these things, is just like, look at BET as an example. I can remember a time when the lineup on BET was Bev Smith and Ed Gordon and news and a show about finance and a show about this and a show about that. And now you look at where our culture has gone, and it's a lot of love and hip hop, a lot of broken relationships, a lot of like hoochie mama-ness, a lot of this. Yes. And I will also say, I just want to add this one last point. I do have a grown child now with a previous wife, but I never had a baby mama. Right, in my life, I had a co-parent, right? And that's a whole different relationship. That's a whole different cultural relationship. And it ended up successful because I never had a baby mama. I had a co-parent in my life. So I don't know. Maybe y'all can help me with the mixed message that I hear about these things.
I love it. Dr.
I was going to pile on the mix. So, one, I just want to acknowledge the pretty women privilege that y'all talked about with 3 days.
Right.
Listen, if you're doing that, you're either going to be broke or trifling. You're going to be broke because you're paying for good dates 3 times a day, multiple times a week, and that's expensive. Or you're going to be trifling because you ain't paying for something. They're going to be like, sister, he trifling. That's just one. I just want to acknowledge this pretty women privilege. And for the brother in the top, man, who was worried about the catfish, listen, brother, if you talking to somebody and you like her and you ain't got on a video chat and she won't get on there with you, just go ahead and turn off, brother. Those things just came up, and I just wanted to make sure we addressed it. But I do want to just kind of circle back to like the name of the topic, right? Which is around, single parents, and we having a good time talking about dating and what does dating look like in our community. And again, you got to do what works for you. You know what I'm saying? And it's some stuff out there that probably ain't for me. But on Instagram, I was like, wait, did I just see 5 like polygamy pages? I didn't even know that was something that was out, right? You know what I'm saying? That's on the rise. I think people got to start living their life for them, right? And stop living it for the gram and Twitter or whatever the case is. What do you want out of life? Claim it, and you should just go for that thing and not really worry about what people got to say. Because when you try to fit in a box that you don't fit in, that's just going to be uncomfortable for everybody else. And I want to shout out Chris for what he said. Like, just putting it out there. Me and my first wife didn't work out, but we was co-parents. Like, it's a very different situation when it's a baby mama, baby daddy situation versus, hey, we in a partnership to raise this seed. So I thank you for saying that.
Dr. Charm?
I said it last night, and for people who missed last night's broadcast, I am so team therapy. We can joke, and I know they're going crazy in the chat right now about the online dating. But in the end, people, we've got to have mental health together. I think as a country, black, white, whatever color, I think we have unrealistic expectations of marriage. The absentee father really affects women because that's our first. It affects women and men, but for women, it's really tragic because that is our first example of a man and our first example of a man showing love to us. And so I did not grow up with my father. I did not have my father, but I had uncles. I had parents who other parents, friends, and friends and family where I saw people who had been married 40, 30, 20 years. And I've seen healthy examples of that. And I've also, gotten therapy, because otherwise we have all these broken people who are walking around resentful, and they're taking it out. The women with daddy issues and men with mama issues, men with daddy issues, and they're taking it out on the significant other and abusing them and projecting all that onto that person, because people really are walking around not getting the help that they need. I had a conversation with a guy this evening. He was talking about, my mom really messed up the relationship with my stepdad, and she really messed it up, and I really resent how she did him and treated. And that was, I'm like, how many years ago this happened? That was 18 years ago, and he's still walking around carrying this. And And this same conversation, the guys, I said, so what about therapy? Have you thought about therapy? Well, I talked to my boys, and I think, I'm strong, and if I go to therapy, that's me showing weakness, and I should be able to handle that on my own. And then we continue to have these kind of attitudes. You're going to have a bunch of broken people walking around, terrorizing other people when they get into relationships and not valuing the relationships that they have. And then when you get out of that, it's like a disease, like the corona. You done coughed on this person, then they cough on the next person, and you're just carrying that over into relationship. It's enough already. You got to put a stop to it. Go to the therapist, my God. And I tell people, they got a doctor. If something's wrong with your heart, you going to the cardiologist. If something's wrong with your kidneys, God forbid, you're going to go to the kidney specialist. If you got a problem with your nether regions, you're going to the gynecologist and to the prostate doctor and everything else. There are people who are here for your mind, and this is what they do for a living. They love to do it, and they are here to help you figure out your life. So there's nothing wrong with getting help. Get some help.
But to your point, Dr. Charm, mental health is sort of taboo still, even though we're talking about it in the Black community. So how do we get that message out, especially to our Black men? And I don't want to paint you with a broad brush, but a lot of times Black men, they don't want to see no therapist. They don't want to see nobody.
This generation, my mother's generation, because I'm 44. Kyle be 44, honey. Just turn.
And you look 24. Please continue.
Hello, juices and berries. But really, my mother's generation, everything was a secret. I mean, and this is straight off the plantation. It's a secret. And I watched Underground. If y'all ever seen Underground, that Ernestine, honey, that show really showed me that if you tell certain things, that can get you killed. So you have to understand that generation where we've got to keep this a secret. We've got to keep it in the family. We got to keep it to ourselves. I really appreciate this millennial generation, what's happening now, where getting therapy and getting mental health help is really something that is, this is in now. Everybody is talking about that. I think Beyonce donated money to mental health during the coronavirus. That was one of the things that she donated a lot of money to. So people are really starting to speak out about things. Taraji has that mental health. She's got the organization of the philanthropic, and she's doing podcasts about it. So we've got to take the stigma out of it, people. And I really encourage everybody to get yourself a Black mental health professional, because there's certain things you don't have to tell them. You don't have to walk in here and say, well, this what happened was racist and this is how it works. You don't have to
that's a great point you're making, Dr. Charm. I want to let's jump in on that mental health piece, because one thing I'll tell you is that I'm a believer in intentionality, and when Dr. Cole was talking about an arranged marriage, I thought about it. I said, I almost feel like I was in an arranged marriage, but I arranged it myself. And what I mean by that is, I one of the things I thought about when I was really trying to figure out, here's the thing, our children don't have both parents in many cases because we don't necessarily have intentionality about our relationships. And what I mean by that is, I wonder if we even understand what the word commitment really means. My dad was a old school, the one who raised me. He was an old school kind of, simple Southern Black man who believed in things like personal responsibility. He would just say, if you want something, just do it. Stop bitching, just go do it. I cussed again. But there's something to that simplicity, because it takes you out of the excuse zone. That we many of us, all of us get trapped in the cycle of excuses. I didn't want it to happen this way, but it did. Well, but you did that, right? Why did you do that if you didn't want this to happen? Well, because now you in child support court, you ain't got no money because you got all these baby mamas and children everywhere, right? So you had something to do with that process, and I'm not looking down on that, right? But I do think that there's something about intentionality and commitment where you realize that your family is the most important institution that you'll ever be associated with. Your children need you to be the best that you can be for them. And here's the thing: when you're talking about what's supposed to be true, what's supposed to be true is that when you make a commitment, you're supposed to stick to it. What's supposed to be true is that when two people have a baby together, they're supposed to raise that child together, right? It doesn't happen that way. And I think part of it could be because maybe we haven't thought deeply about what commitment really means. Commitment doesn't really mean you do it until you get bored or until it gets hard or you stop when it's not fun anymore. Commitment means that you make a commitment to do something and you stay with it, right? And here's another thing too. And this is not me in any way judging anybody's situation. Everybody's got crazy stuff going on in their life, but there are tools out there. To your point about therapy and things like that, there are tools out there. There are books you can read, videos you can watch on YouTube, therapists you can go see who will tell you, okay, here's how you can work through this problem you're having with your partner. This thing that made you so pissed off that you feel like you got to leave. Here's how you can process that, right? And I don't think people do that. I think people say, I ran into a problem, I couldn't solve it, so I bounced. Well, did you try? Did you do the research? Did you find out what somebody else out there, other than some asshole on the internet? See, down cussing again, 3 in a row, 3 strikes, I'm out. But some person on the internet who don't know nothing about relationships, but you follow them because they got 300,000 YouTube subscribers, gave you some dumb advice, and now your life is a mess. No, go to the professionals because they study this stuff. They have science that says couples who do this are 80% more likely to last than couples who do that, right? They have the research. Follow the research.
You are passionate.
Harder, please.
But you're passionate. I love your passion, brother. To your point, I love all that passion, Dr. Boyce. I love it. But to your point, I'm just looking at the comments, and I just want to just to touch on something, because somebody said, well, what about Jesus? Give it to Jesus and he'll take away all your problems. And that's, I'm not taking anything away from your personal relationship with God or anything like that. But I think Black people are the most religious people in this country, in the world. We believe in God more than anybody. And, we believe in Jesus, and we were introduced to Jesus by, white man, right? But we believe in Jesus more than anybody. And so the only issue with that is we think that a pastor who is not qualified to counsel you is going to be able to help you save your marriage. We believe that if you go to church and you read the Bible, that is going to help you to be able to save your marriage. And in fact, it's not. In fact, to your point, Dr. Charm, to your point, Dr. Boyce, there are people who have gone to school for this very thing. And so we as Black people, we got to get out of the religiosity and start getting to some people who understand understand the psychology of marriage and understand, can really help get you on track. And that's the thing with Black people a lot of times is we want to go to the church house to get our counseling.
Okay, let me just interject on behalf of Black Jesus. Just here's a message from Black Jesus. I don't know what Jesus, not everybody got the same Jesus. Some people got the Jesus that, you be up in the club on Saturday night and the church on Sunday, and Jesus just washes it all away and makes it okay. That's not the same Jesus. I don't have anything profound to say except to say, people in churches, whether we like it or not, statistically speaking, have better statistical outcomes. Children who go to church once per week have a different trajectory than those who don't. Those who go to church twice a week, and some of us are Baptist people and understand what twice a week and 3 times a week can look like, they definitely have different trajectories. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but I am saying, and I'm all for therapy. Listen, if you need somebody to talk to who gets paid a lot of money to listen to you and help you out, I'm all for whatever professional help you need. But Black Jesus can help too. I just want to be clear about that. Church-going people have some of the strongest relationships. Some of them have stronger commitments. When I just heard you use the word commitments, I was thinking to myself, man, that is such an undervalued terminology. Commitment. I know people can't commit to a hairstyle. Can't commit to can't commit to anything for longer than 5 minutes, and that's a lost art. Because I know my grandparents and from their generation, they committed to a lot of things they didn't want to do. They did things every day that they didn't want to do, but they were committed and they had to because they were men and women, stand up men and women. They just had to do it.
Well, Tony, I want to bring you back in. I feel like we cracked the code in terms of knowing what we can do to help our children. I think we've decided, it seems to me that we've concluded that therapy can help. And to Brother Stewart's point, I'm also a believer that your faith can be a plus or a minus depending on how you use it, right? Yeah. Like you mentioned, Brother Stewart. You mentioned that, when you talk about Jesus, there are different Jesuses. There's the Jesus that's really going to challenge you and test you and make you hold a standard. Then there's the easy Jesus, right? The one where you can just do whatever you want and it all washes away because it just did. And so I think that when you talk about that, right? Like I'm a person that doesn't go to church, but when you talk about faith, when it's practiced on a serious level, there are principles there. There's guidelines there, and it's very healthy. Very healthy information that you can actually retrieve from the Bible that's full of wisdom, right? And there are pastors out here that are excellent counselors. They're not just thumping you upside the head with a Bible. They're giving you principles that actually couldn't be beneficial as a backdrop against other forms of support that might come through therapy, right? So like anything else, the power of religion, I imagine, can be productive or it can be toxic, right? Because we've all heard the stories about some of the religions that go too far, where kids are getting molested and just women are getting beaten and things like that. But when you see it in a healthy context, I'm thinking, I don't know, for example, like a T.D. Jakes. I don't think anybody's. All of us could probably think of a time when we heard something T.D. Jakes said and said, that makes sense, right? Because he's got not just the wisdom of a pastor, but he's got the wisdom of an older black man who's lived life, who can relate to us, and that's why we appreciate him. So, Tony, so what would you say if I were trying to do this thing and trying to make it work and really trying to hold my situation together and my family and everything? What would be some advice you might throw at me so that I can really be there for my children the way I want to be?
Well, I would say, in the context of where we're talking about church and the like professional counseling, we tend to view this through a lens of either or, when actually, they can both work in tandem. Like, so there's never, you don't have to choose. And, I'm a pastor's son. Like, my father's a bishop, a Pentecostal church. And there's a scripture that says faith without works is dead. So you can have faith. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of doing what you need to do in order to make things work, especially for your children. So, I'm a single father. I have 4 children, and right now my son, he's 13 years old. He's the last one, getting ready for high school. And I've had custody of him since he was a baby. And, I tried a lot to make things work. So I'm old school. You know what I'm saying? I'm old school. So I come from the school of where you really do what you have to do to make things work. You have that intentionality like you were talking about earlier, but I think society today, it really works hard to erase that intentionality that you have when it comes to these relationships that we engage in with each other. So I think, we need to just, as a community, just kind of try to figure out ways of not always looking to replace one with the other. We can still do what we have to do together, especially as it comes to, rearing our children.
Okay, that's a good point. So what we can do now, by the way, everybody, we're doing a panel on, we started off talking about children without both parents, and it went into dating and relationships, which I think was appropriate actually, because that's where children come from, right? You date, you have relationships, and how that relationship goes determines how easy or how difficult that child's path is going to be, right? It's much easier as a child to have 2 parents that get along than it is to have 2 parents who hate each other, right? So there's a connection, right? So that's why I thought it was great to go into dating and everything else. I didn't feel like we were straying off topic at all, because that's where babies come from, right? So if the panelists would do this honor for me, first of all, the audience, if you guys could hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, please do that. And I should also mention that we have the blacklovechannel.com, which I hope you'll subscribe to. Because that's actually where a lot of our relationship kinds of conversations go, and I like to hear from a lot of perspectives, or anybody that can help you have a better life. Because you guys know that I do a lot of wealth talk. That's a big deal. But as I thought more and more about wealth, I started realizing how important relationships are to your ability to build wealth. It's hard to build an empire when you're spending all your time fighting with your number one partner in that empire, right? Any empire in history that I know of where the 2 leaders of the empire are at war with each other didn't last very long, right? So do not disconnect the importance of maintaining healthy relationships with your ability to build. It might even come down to just business partners. Constance, Rob, you work with Rob a lot, right? Rob is his name, right? Yeah, you and Rob get along really well, and it's allowing you to build together. and you couldn't build like that if you didn't get along really well. So I know that my brothers, Mr. Stewart and Dr. Cole, they work together. They are partners, right? So these partnerships are, these relationships are critical to find them, maintain them, and work through your differences so that you can keep building as opposed to fighting. So I hope everybody gets that. Give me a yes in the chat if you get that. So I'd like to ask everybody in the panel if you could do this. Could you give us like a closing statement? Just something that'll let us walk away smarter and better people. Because we're not just here to just chop it up. I want us to all be better. So let's start with you, Dr. Cole. What parting statement would you like to leave us with that will help us all go home feeling like we are all better, more capable Black people?
So one, just Black dads do matter. They matter a lot. I wrote a whole book about it, Beyond Grit and Resilience, and it talks about Black boys that grew up to become doctors and what helped with that. And for those single moms that were there, hope is not lost. What the data says is that a father figure. So what these mothers did is that they found their uncles, they found her brother, they found other people in the community. They surrounded that boy with other men. And it's important for Black boys and Black girls to have Black men in their life, whether it's their biological father or not. I think on this piece, just to put a button on this last part, man, for relationships, there's a right conversation and a real conversation. And you probably shouldn't be listening to people that are miserable, that can't keep a man or can't keep a woman. That's probably not where you want to go for your advice. It's just not, right? I'm just telling, it's not a diss to nobody. It's just, you want to go to somebody that's been married for 50 years or 60 years or that got some wisdom about them, right? And I think what we didn't touch on, but we alluded to, and I want to leave us with, is the importance of generational knowledge that we need to pass down. Sure, we're supposed to expand and improve upon the previous generation, but that doesn't mean we throw out that wisdom and we don't listen to it. So go sit down with Big Mom and have some lemonade and let her school you. And go sit down with Grandpa, who's been heading his household for 50 years and put kids through school and raise families and all that stuff, and let him school you. And I appreciate you having us here, Boyce. And if y'all want to check out the show Chris and I got, it's called 8 Black Hands, and it's about 4 Black brothers talking about Black education for the 8 million Black children in this country.
Right. All right. So that show is called 8 Black Hands.
Yes, you've been on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That I know. I remember being on there. It was a really great interview. And so that's just the number 8 Black Hands.
Number
right?
8 Black Hands. And if it's on Twitter, 8 Black Hands 1, the number 1, and you can find us. So we'll help y'all out with that. Just reach out.
There we go. All right. So everybody go find that show, subscribe, and support what these brothers are doing. I think it's extraordinary. So Dr. Charm, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, I want to be hopeful. They said I was loud in the chat, but at this point we need to be loud because there's some things we need to hear. But really, I remain hopeful. I am an eternal optimist. I think that down the line we'll look back and say, okay, we struggled, but what was it? Without struggle, there's no progress. And I really, really do believe that Black people, we have the ability, we have all the tools that we need. The financial acumen, the knowledge, the fortitude. I mean, we come from all these different ethnicities in Africa. We are the best of all the ethnicities together. When we were brought over here on the slave ships, I mean, I've got Akan, Fulani, Tikar, Hausa. I did my ancestry DNA, and so we really are the best. We are the ones who survived. We are the ones who made it. And we have everything in our arsenal to be successful. And I think that if we know that and really internalize that there is nothing that can stop us. And so, this whole thing with marriage and the fatherhood and that kind of thing, brother, I think it was Brother Tony, one of them already said that Black men, 70% of Black men are involved in bathing their children, changing their children. So just because they may not be married on paper doesn't mean they aren't involved in the life. Just because a woman isn't married doesn't mean she doesn't have male role models for her children. We are really fighting against the legacy of chattel slavery, the trauma of all these things that have happened to us. And we are such a brilliant, bright, and shining people. We have nowhere to go but up. And I am hopeful, and we're going to do it. We are going to do it. We have to believe it. We have the tools. We really do have the tools to do it.
All right. Yes, we do have the tools for sure. And so my brother, Tony Lindsay, Your parting thoughts for today. Oh, let me unmute him. I think you're muted, brother.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, yeah. Well, one of the main things missing from the conversation uh, at large has been the black male perspective. And because we've been trained to see society, uh, well, society has pretty much kind of trained us to dismiss that perspective. And that perspective is why I even chose to write and direct and produce my movie. You know, we love our black women, but we have to also recognize that black men are under attack in this country, and we do have a voice that is quite valuable. And, you know, it needs to be heard, even if society says otherwise. And we talk about patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all of those things, which are literally defined through the actions of white men, but somehow it always gets scapegoated to black men. So I think that dysfunctionality in relationships, in black relationships, is something that it sells. You know, that's why we have the love and hip hops and all of the weird, ridiculous drama that we've come to love. You know, social media, news media, Hollywood, they always propagate these types of images that we tend to glorify and enjoy, but we don't realize how it actually kind of reverses back and harms us as a community. So what I would like to just say to all black people out there is that we let's just remember that we're in this together.
Well, can you give everybody the name? Give everybody the name of your film, brother. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, the name of the film is Where Hearts Lie.
Where Hearts Lie.
Where Hearts Lie.
And where can we watch that? Because everybody in here, they support black, so I want them to know exactly how they can support you.
Yes, well, right now it's you can find it on Amazon Video. It's on Vimeo, and it's about to be on all the streaming platforms. I think it's also on Tubi right now as well. So
okay.
we're putting it back.
Great.
Out.
All right, everybody in the chat, give me a yes if you plan to go support this brother's movie. And also, you saw my brother's book, Beyond Grit and Resilience. I hope that you will go support the book. Remember, we're building a black economy here, you know, and nobody in here that's showing up in these panels is paid to be here. But everybody's got bills to pay, and I hope that you will show as much economic love to the black people that come through here as we show to white folks, because y'all know we love giving our money over to massa. That's some of us act like that's our life destiny. All right, so I'd like to move on to my brother, Citizen Stewart, aka Chris Stewart. Is Chris Stewart your actual name, or should I just keep calling you Citizen Stewart?
Now you done busted me out. Now everybody know me.
The feds will be at your door by 9 o'clock tonight, right? All right, so my brother, Citizen Stewart, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to clarify a point. When you say that me and Dr. Cole are building something together, I want people to know we ain't that kind of partners. I just want to be real about it. We are building something together.
The appropriate term is no homo.
Okay, there you go. If that's what I should have used, but he is my brother. He is definitely my family and brother. We are building something together. So for my final thought on all of this is, we awfulize our people in so many ways, and we find new and clever ways to awfulize our people every day. I just want to say shout out to those of us and to the people that I know that are doing the right thing, that are taking care of children, that are voting, that are starting businesses, that are teaching the children in their communities how to start businesses and what it means to own yourself and be yourself, who are building churches and planting churches and growing them and growing people of faith, who are mentoring, who are feeling blessed by God to have more in their manhood to offer fathering to a broader set than just to their own children, to a broader humanity. Shout out to the people that think that way and do that every day, because they do exist. They are invisible to media, and sometimes we participate in the invisibility of the good people that are doing good things every day. We study failure a lot, but we rarely study success and then demystify it for young people. So shout out to the people that are doing that. Shout out to the people that are doing what you said, that have a commitment to things, to each other, to a culture, and to building. That was one of the most important words I heard out of any of this tonight, was just relationship is not just being together. It is building something that didn't exist before. It's producing in the world for the race, for the culture, for yourselves, for your communities. When I said earlier that we have two places that we have to fight the external and the internal. We have to fight the external things that are anti-family, anti-man, anti-family, anti-community, intact unit, systemic racism and disempowerment, putting more people in cages than on stages. We have to literally like attack that as much as we possibly can, because we can't blame everything on other people, but we can blame the things on other people that they deserve to be blamed for. And then the last part that I'll say is the internal stuff. We have to do our work to recreate the internal culture that we have, a culture of marriage, a culture of togetherness, a culture of belonging, a culture that honors its children and asks questions like, how are the children? And knowing that your entire society lives and dies by the answer to that question, how are the children? That's my final thought.
Wow, great question. How are the children? There we go. Everybody type that in the chat. How are the children? Think about the children. Stop thinking about yourself all the time. Miss Carter, speaking of the children, Miss Constance Carter has a son that is an avid investor. He's richer than most white people, and he has been investing in stocks and making big money. What's he up to? About 40, 50K now?
He's at 40K.
Yeah.
But it's all due to this brother up here at the top. That's where it all started. Yes.
There you go.
16, and he's at 40K right now. I think he made about 12K in the last month.
Wow, that's what I'm talking about. So, Miss Carter, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, I think about, the things that everybody said, and they're all thoughtful and meaningful. And I had a lot of the same views on relationships about, commitment and covenant and all of those things, because they're very important. But I know that sometimes things just don't work. And that's the bottom line. Things just don't work. And I think that there's a lot of internal things that we need to do. Brother Chris talked about, going and sitting down with Big Mom and them and just seeing how they were able to make things work for 40, 50 years. But a lot of times they were in dysfunctional relationships. The husband had, a side, and this is in my family, so I don't know about anybody else's family, but they have whole other families and relationships, and people are miserable and they're just there because they're there. It does not mean that it's healthy. And so there's a lot of internal work. And to Dr. Charm's point and to Dr. Boyce's point, we have to look at really internally getting that mental health taken care of, dialing down on that. And so that we can become whole human beings. And if it does not work, then figure out how you can work together. And that's where I am right now, just figuring out how we can work together to make sure that our kids have what they need so that they can be the best that they can be, and trying to, lessen the impact and fill in the gap and make sure that they're still happy and healthy. And I mean, that's the bottom line for me, is just kind of figuring out how I can fill in the gap, because we don't have that unit anymore. So that's been really important to me. But I think there's just a lot of work that we need to internally do. And again, sometimes things just don't work. And the Black family is the foundation of the Black community. And we have to figure out, maybe more non-traditional ways, just like Dr. Charm talked about, filling in the gaps with those uncles, and everybody else talked about filling in the gaps with those uncles and mentors and having all those people around. These brothers are, unfortunately, in a lot of places, the exception and not the rule. So we don't see a lot of them in a lot of the neighborhoods. And how do we get that? How do we get that out to the masses? I don't know. But I think that's a very necessary and a very real question that we need to have.
All right. Well, I love it. These are great, excellent final thoughts. And I hope you'll join me in giving a digital round of applause to the panelists. Please go follow them on social media. Look at what they have going on. Let's make them rich and famous and successful and everything that they want to be in life. I want to see everybody win. We own our own Black media. That's what we're all doing, and we want to build and create the community that we want to see come to life. Also, hit the thumbs up button, share button, and subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. And don't forget that the Women of Wealth weekend is coming up this weekend. I know Constance will be there, and about 20 different Black female experts on everything from starting your money making side hustle to making money from an online class, financial lovemaking. I think they have a lot of other great topics. So check it out. There's the URL. I'm going to give a quick final thought, and I'm going to say this. Here's the deal. First of all, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that so many crazy things happen in our families. It's not your fault. You don't have to blame yourself. Don't beat up on yourself because it's complex, right? We know how white supremacy works. We know that things were done to us. We know that people did harm to us. We know about legislative moves that were made deliberately designed to create some of the chaos that we're seeing right now. It's not all chaos, but there's a little bit too much of it and not enough for us to build. We also understand in addition to knowing that it's not your fault, we understand the importance of healthy relationships when it comes to empire building. You cannot compete with white supremacy if you cannot form structured, cooperative scenarios where everyone's helping each other in a productive way to achieve a collective goal. You cannot have success in this society as Black people without some sort of collective action, starting with your family. Your family is your first institution, your first army, your first business, your first everything. Constance will tell you that. Her son's going to be a multimillionaire one day. He's going to be a great soldier to have in her army. With that said, while we know that it's not your fault when you see some of the dysfunction in your family, a lot of us have it. It's not your fault that it's there, but it is your responsibility to address it. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And what that requires is a type of relationship consciousness where you take stock of some of the things that you grew up with, some of the things you thought were normal, but you know that they're abnormal, things that you know were unhealthy, things that you know were very traumatic. And it's important that you take responsibility to break those cycles and to get the help that you need so you can break those cycles in a healthy way and give your children a chance to have a life that's better than the one that you grew up with. You know, when I grew up, when I was a baby, I was stunned. I was literally stunned when I found out that when I was born, I asked my mother, I said, who was in the delivery room when I was born? She said, it was just me, you, and the doctor. And I said, there was nobody even waiting in the hallway. She said, no. She said, Grandma dropped me off at the hospital to give birth to you. And they went to Kingfish because Friday night was when they went to eat Kingfish. And I knew my daddy wasn't there, but I found out there was nobody there. And I just visualized my 17-year-old mother and this baby by themselves in the hospital. And I said, oh my God, it was just me and you. That was like a scary thought. And I was sitting there thinking, my God, I would have aborted me. Why? That's got to be so scary. And I had so much respect for that woman in that moment to know that she stuck it out for whatever reason. She stuck it out. And that's why I'm here talking to you right now. And what I will say to you is that these traumatic stories are way too common. You know, these crazy challenges in our families, these are solvable problems. That's what I'm saying. As a community, we have too many of our people that die from diseases and illnesses that could have been prevented. And we have families that die from problems that could be solved with a good therapist. So I want you to take stock of some relationship consciousness. I want you to understand what it means to be intentional. I want you to understand that word commitment. I want you to understand what it means to make a choice. And what that requires is that you're going to have to go get some help. If you are as crazy as the rest of us, raise your hand in the chat if you're crazy. Say, yeah, all the crazy Black people in the room say, I'm raising both hands because I know that some of the stuff I saw was not normal, but it is your responsibility to become conscious of it and to do something about it so you can create healthier environments that will allow you to build. You cannot build a strong community if you're starting over in every generation. And this ain't about wealth. This is about things that are far more important than wealth. This is about so many other things beyond wealth. So I just want you to understand that. So that's my 2 cents for today. Thank you again to all the panelists that came in. I appreciate y'all very, very much. And also thank you all for listening. I hope you'll hit the thumbs up button on your way out of here. And there's the URL for the Women of Wealth Weekend if you want to join. And also, please make sure you subscribe to something because we're building Black media. And I really appreciate my relationship with you. And I will never take that for granted. If I ever do, just slap me upside the head and set me straight because I love y'all too much to be stupid. So take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. And thanks to the panelists as well.